So this is the section on fungi. Previously in this class, we have talked about domain archaea, domain bacteria, and we have begun discussing domain eukarya with kingdom protista. Here we begin the first of what I refer to sometimes as the big three kingdoms because fungi, plantae, and animalia are the multicellular kingdoms, whereas Protista was everything that was single cell that didn't quite fit the definition of the big three. So fungi are multicellular eukaryotes. They are heterotrophic by absorption. They secrete digestive enzymes into the environment, which means that they are able to break down what they need outside of themselves and then just absorb the nutrients that they need, which reduces the amount of waste products they have to process and then get rid of. So it's kind of an efficient mechanism. With our bacteria previously, we talked about saprophytic feeders, and I said to learn that term because saprophytic was going to be similar to something you heard later, and that is the case here with our saprotrophic. I'm going to go to a presentation mode here. Here we go. So our fungi join in with that group of organisms that help break down the other dead organisms and recycle those nutrients in the environment so that living things can use those and life can continue. Some of these are parasitic in this process. They will cause harm, even death to their host. Others are mutualistic. They have a relationship that is beneficial to them and to the host, or it would must be called a host at that point, but the other organism in the symbiotic relationship. Their storage molecule is glycogen, and this has been mentioned before briefly. I want to emphasize it more here that this is one of the ways in which fungi are more like animal cells than they are like plant cells. Now, they have a cell wall, and a plant cell has a cell wall, but in a little bit, you're going to see that that wall is different. Animal cells do not have a cell wall. So that's a definite distinction between a fungal cell and an animal cell. But inside the cell, we use the same type of molecule for storage of energy, and that's our glycogen. The name is based on the reproductive structures, and you're going to see that in a little bit. We will break the phyla down and talk about them, and each phyla has a name that is connected in some way to how the spores are made or some function that they have. The body of the fungus is composed of a mycelium, and a mycelium is made up of a network of filaments or what look like little hairs, and in plural these are called hyphae. Um, in Latin that should be pronounced hyphae, but that sounds like stereo equipment, so everybody I've ever heard pronounce that calls hyphae instead of hyphae. A single one of those hairs or filaments is called a hypha. The whole grouping of that would be the mycelium. So one of the things I said was that it has a cell wall like a plant, um, but the cell wall composition is going to be different, as you'll see. Inside the cell, fungal cells lack chloroplasts. So again, they do not photosynthesize. And how the cell wall is different is that it contains chitin. That's how it's pronounced, chitin. Okay, the CH has a K sound. It's from the Greek, rather than cellulose, which is what you find in the plant cell walls. Reproduction is by wind-blown non-flagellate, meaning they don't have flagella for movement, mostly. Okay, most commonly they're non-flagellate spores, and these are going to be used for both sexual and asexual reproduction. Though in most cases these spores are produced in different structures for each of those, as you will see that as we go through the different phyla. So this is a drawing of a fungus, something we'd probably refer to as a mold. This is the mycelium, as the bracket shows. This whole structure would be referred to as a mycelium, and a single little hair, it's like a finger sticking out there, is the hypha, what's circled here, this down here. I've got a pointing tool, but I've tried to use it previously and it froze my presentation. I had trouble going forward after I used it. So I think I'll just, hopefully this cursor here you can see, and we'll go forward with this and see how it works. This is a picture of an actual fungus. Again, you'd probably look at this and call it a mold, especially if you saw something like this in your refrigerator, which you probably have, growing on something that you forgot about. Piece of bread left out on the shelf, or even its bag on the counter. If it's left there long enough, will usually grow fuzzy stuff, either whitish, green. Those are kind of the two more common colors that you see on the counters and in refrigerators of food that's left out. So this whole structure is called a mycelium. And then if you look at just one of these little hairs, these even little fine hairs here, that's going to be your hypha, one single one called a hypha. This is your table. When I cut and paste this into the PowerPoint presentation onto the slide, for some reason it always shifts my tabs over. So the letters and things are on the right-hand side, and I can't seem to figure out how to keep it from shifting. There's probably a way, but I haven't discovered it. This is in D2L as a single page, just the table itself on the page, nothing else on there, but just the table. I believe in that document, it has kept its formatting to where the numbers and letters are on the left-hand side, hopefully. If not, you'll just have to use it like this, where you have space here to write in the items we're going to talk about. If you have the capability to print this off, I highly recommend it. If not, then a piece of paper, notebook paper, you can make your columns, and that'll actually give you more room to write. So you might actually enjoy that better. But I recommend you do that before the next part of the fungi. People pronounce it differently. I've always pronounced it fungi mostly because that's how most of the people I studied under called it. But tomato, tomato, right? If you do that on notebook paper, I think you'll have a little bit more room to write the things I'm going to tell you. None of these are terribly long words. They do fit in here, but you might have to write kind of small. So that's an idea, an advantage to having to make up your own on notebook paper. If you don't have access to a printer, you feel like you're at a disadvantage, well, it might turn out to be an advantage. So either way, I do highly recommend you take notes on this part, these particular notes as we go through these 5 phyla, because these are the things I will stress on the test. Okay, some of the cell features that we just went over, of course, are easily questions you can tell from the way how I test on the test. So prepare this, and I will see you in the next part.